You're listening to Unearthed, Gold and the Unknown, where lost riches wait in the dark and restless spirits guard what's buried below. Dare to dig deeper.
I want you to picture something with me, but not like a movie. Slower than that. It's early 1900s Mexico. You're deep in the Sierra Madre mountains. No roads, no town nearby, no law coming if something goes wrong. You and two other men have been digging for weeks. Tonight, for the first time, you pour real gold dust into a small metal scale. It's more than you expected. And suddenly, the man across from you doesn't look like your partner anymore.
He looks like someone who's calculating, and that's the shift. Not when you find gold, but when you measure it. When value becomes visible, that's when psychology enters the room.
By the early 1900s, the big American gold rushes were fading. California was tapped, Nevada was industrialized, independent prospectors weren't striking it rich anymore. But the hunger didn't disappear.
No, it migrated. Men who built their identities around finding gold weren't ready to stop, so they drifted south into northern Mexico, into Chihuahua, Durango, and the remote Sierra Madre regions. And these weren't organized corporate mining operations. These were small partnerships, 2 or 3 men, sometimes strangers who agreed to split whatever they found, which is already unstable.
Now layer in the Mexican Revolution beginning in 1910. Political upheaval, shifting control of territory, armed revolutionary factions, federal troops, bandits.
Which meant rural mountain regions were unpredictable at best. If something happened to you out there, there wasn't necessarily an investigation. There wasn't necessarily a record. That absence of oversight creates 2 things at once: opportunity and danger.
So let's talk about real camp life. No cabins, maybe a rough lean-to, canvas if you were lucky, limited water, and food supplies that ran thin quickly. Long days of digging and hauling rock, and nights around a small fire.
And crucially, gold dust weighed and divided at night, because dust is portable, easy to conceal, easy to skim. Fairness becomes subjective quickly. If one man thinks he's worked harder, dug deeper, or found a vein, resentment forms, and resentment in isolation grows without interruption.
Historical accounts from northern Mexico describe prospectors found dead in camps with minimal explanation. Gunshots, falls, accidents. Sometimes a partner returned to town alone, claiming bandits.
And bandits absolutely existed. Revolutionary instability created armed groups operating in rural areas. Foreign prospectors were visible targets. But historians notice a pattern. Isolated camps with sudden wealth and a disproportionate number of unclear deaths. Internal violence statistically rises when portable wealth and isolation intersects. That's not speculation. That's human behavior under pressure.
There's a phrase that people use, gold fever. But in the Sierra Madre, it went beyond excitement. It became fear. Fear that someone would steal your share. Fear that you'd wake up later. Fear that your partner was watching you the way that you were watching him.
Gold doesn't just represent wealth in that environment. It represents escape, redemption, proof you weren't foolish to come. When that much hope is condensed into a pouch of dust, protecting it becomes obsessive, and obsession shifts perception. A normal movement at night becomes suspicious. A delayed answer becomes incriminating. Sleep becomes lighter. Conversations become shorter.
So let's walk through a realistic scenario based on the documented patterns. 3 men strike a promising vein. They begin pulling steady dust. Not a fortune yet, but enough to matter. 1 man starts sleeping closer to the scale. Another checks the pouch when he thinks no one is looking. The third notices both.
Tensions build slowly. No dramatic confrontation, just small rifts. Trust thinning quietly. One night, someone wakes to a sound, a rustle, a hand near a bag. And when suspicion has been fermenting for weeks, one misunderstood motion can trigger irreversible action. And that's how many of these stories likely end. Not with cinematic betrayal, but with escalating fear.
When B. Traven wrote the novel that inspired the movie The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, he wasn't inventing paranoia. He lived in Mexico. He was famously secretive. His true identity is still debated. Some people believe that he had first-hand experience amongst the workers and the miners.
And that matters because the novel's power doesn't come from hidden treasure maps. It comes from psychological unraveling. He understood that gold wasn't the treasure, it was the trigger.
And you know what makes these stories hit differently for me? I mean, we've walked through places like Virginia City and we've felt how intense a mining town can be. We've stood in buildings layered with ambition and collapse. Now imagine stripping away the town entirely. Just mountains, just partners, no witnesses.
In Virginia City, at least there were streets, structures, community. In the Sierra Madres, there's nothing to buffer tension. No law, no outside perspective, just gold and whatever parts of yourself surface under pressure.
Okay, 3 men, 1 disappears. Bandits or betrayal?
Both were plausible historically, but internal conflict is statistically more consistent in isolated wealth environments. That doesn't mean greed alone caused it. Often it was fear. Fear of losing everything after risking everything. Fear is the accelerant.
So gold doesn't create monsters. It just exposes what's already there.
Exactly.
Well, the Sierra Madre still stands. The terrain hasn't changed much. But somewhere in those mountains are dozens of unresolved stories. Not one legendary buried chest, but camps where trust dissolved under the weight of gold dust.
And that's what makes this powerful. It isn't about a single lost treasure waiting to be found. It's about what happened when ambition meets isolation. And not everyone walks back out.
I think that's what stays with me most. Not the idea of the hidden gold still buried somewhere, but the image of men sitting around a small fire, staring at a scale, slowly realizing it's changing them.
The danger wasn't just the revolution or the bandits or the terrain. It was what happens inside people when everything they risk their lives for is suddenly within reach.
It's easy for us to romanticize treasure, but it's harder to sit with the reality that sometimes the treasure is what starts the unraveling.
And sometimes the scariest thing in the desert isn't a ghost. It's the silence between partners who don't trust each other anymore.
This has been Unearthed, Gold in the Unknown,
Where we dig into history.
and sometimes discover that what's buried isn't metal.
It's human nature.
We'll see you next time.